On the 6th of August, I learned you can't fix the broken wings of a butterfly. Or less that you can't, or that you shouldn't. As much as it may hurt to watch, you'll do more harm than good if you try to help. All of your empathy and your urge to save the butterfly only benefits your conscience. Butterflies are fragile. It's the nature of nature. Bigger things come along to end their short lives, be it predators or death himself. Still though, altruistic intent does not discriminate. The lone thought is, how can I save you? I need to save you. It's not in the nature of empathy to consider the long-term consequences of these actions. Butterflies, like all other creatures, have complexities that enable their survival. Every touch on a butterfly's wing destroys a bit of its complexity. Details too small for our eyes to see are removed, and in their place is residue from our fingertips. While it may not be enough for us to notice, to a butterfly this added weight can be too much for their wings to bear. We walk away smiling, thinking we've done a good thing, thinking we've saved the butterfly from a premature expiration when we've actually done the opposite. At no point did we stop to consider the butterfly may not need our help. Perhaps we managed to glue the wing back together with no additional damage. Even so, the wing will never truly heal. Wings don't just grow back together like a paper cut. It would be for the butterfly akin to carrying around an arm or a leg that doesn't function. What we fail to remember is that the butterfly is strong on its own. After all, it survived thus far without your assistance. If a butterfly's wings, under chaos theory, have the power to create a tornado, why would you assume it can't hop from flower to flower? Even with a broken wing, a butterfly can still fly. This brings me to my concern. I'd like us all to take the chance, when given, to consider if our help is truly necessary. If you think someone or something requires your help or a situation requires you to intervene, just pause. So consider if what you're doing is actually beneficial or if you're just making yourself feel better. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't intended to bash wanting to help. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's a word for it: altruism. As defined by psychology today, altruism is acting to help someone else at some cost to oneself. While this cost may be as trivial as a minute of your time, it can also be as great as risking your life. In a study by Oxford University, detailed in the journal Social, Cognitive, and Affective Neuroscience, they linked altruism to our DNA, a gene that makes us want to help. Contrarily, a study by Stanford University found that it's not that simple, and that it's actually learned through our own personal interactions and how we see others interact. Now, either way, what we can say is, altruism comes from a combination of empathy and wanting to help. Altruism is not a bad thing. It's actually essential in maintaining an interdependent society. If no one ever had any desire to help anyone else, our society would be centered on selfishness and we'd likely end up in chaos. Instead of thinking, what can I do for the betterment of my community? We'd be thinking, what can I do for my own benefit? In a give and take world with no give, there's only take, and nobody likes to be taken from. Think of a time where you wanted or even needed help. It feels good to know that someone cares enough to help you, especially when they ask nothing in return. On the other hand, it feels good to be the person helping. Think of some time when you were helpful to someone else. Maybe you helped someone with their homework, helped someone carry groceries, or just donated your change to charity. How did it make you feel? Most people feel happy after these types of interactions, or they feel a sense of satisfaction. Thrive Global tells us that this is because when helping, endorphins or pain relief hormones are released into your brain. The idea is that in giving, we receive a natural version of a watered-down morphine high called helper's high. The point where altruism or giving goes wrong is when the helper's high is prioritized over the benefiting others. While this likely wasn't the intent, we may be subconsciously too focused on the high to consider if there's really a help involved. A simple example of this would be a baby bird. If you see a baby bird hopping around on the ground, your first instinct is probably to pick them up and find their nest, or maybe take them home and adopt them. Just being helpful, right? Nothing wrong with that. Actually, there is. A 2018 article by the National Audubon Society explains that at the fledgling age, baby birds actually don't need your help. The only time they would is if they were injured or surrounded by predators. It's actually common for them to be hopping around on the ground, and when you pick them up under the guise of helping, you're taking away their opportunity to learn how to be a bird. And did you know that most of the time when baby birds are fed by non-professionals, they end up with food in their lungs? This example and many others can be summarized into one very simple statement, which I'm sure you've heard before. Melanie Furr of the Atlanta Audubon Society and Atlanta Wild Animal Rescue Effort said, "A lot of times it ends up doing more harm than good." Now, this isn't just a people to animal issue. It can also be applied to interactions with your peers. Let's say your best friend asks you for the answers to the math assignment because they weren't paying attention in class. You give them the answers thinking, of course, that's my best friend. I wouldn't want them to fail the assignment, right? Now that you've given them the answers, they don't know how to do it on their own. So they've passed a 10-point assignment only to fail a 50-point assessment when it comes to the actual test. This brings me to a suggestion concerning my topic. What if instead of giving them the answers, you explained whatever they missed or you taught them whatever they weren't paying attention to? This way, they can do it on their own and pass the assignment and the assessment. What I'm saying is, it's okay to find alternative ways to help. This brings me back to my butterfly. While you may not be able to help as far as physically fixing the wing of the butterfly, you can make sure that they get back to a safe place. For me, this was as simple as watching the butterfly until it got back into the woods behind my house. This way, you can know that you were helpful without having potentially done more harm. I have no idea what happened to that butterfly. And while it's not the same feeling of thinking you saved a life, you can still be content knowing that you didn't do more damage than good. Let's look again at the baby bird. Instead of picking them up and doing the work for them, what you can do is check the area for predators or immediate danger, or just watch them until they get back to their nest. These are ways you can be content knowing that you've helped without causing more issue. In considering alternative ways to help, please consider the words of a Chinese proverb by the philosopher Lao Tzu. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. Helping is fundamental in all aspects of life and should by no means be tossed aside. What should be done is everyone making a conscious effort to be the best helpers that we can be. Please consider when and when not to help. If the need to help is too profound to overcome, please consider the words of Lao Tzu. On the 6th of August, my dog tried to eat a butterfly. And on that day I learned, sometimes it's better to let the chips fall where they may. Maybe the butterfly dies, or maybe it lives to fly again. Whatever side fate chooses is simply the way of the world. Life turns to death, turns to life. Sometimes there's nothing you can do, and sometimes nothing needs to be done. Sometimes it's best to simply accept this fate as it comes and just be glad you got to see a butterfly.